Gentlemen, are we ready? Yes! Fantastic. Right, so welcome to our first experiment with competitive debating. So we decided that lecturing you is a very bad idea. Well, because as Steve Jobs said, there's no point, hiring smart people and telling them what to do. So you have to tell us what to do. So let me explain to you how this format of competitive debating works. So I have a distinct pleasure to welcome here Mr. Peter Hilton. And in the left side of the sparring ring is the only one, Oleksii Stepanuk. Okay, I will assume a humble role of referee. So kind of whatever I say is by definition right. Yeah. Okay, so how this works, guys? So we have 2 points of view that we want to explore. And these are quite simple. We need QA and we don't. How simple can it be, right? And what we will talk about, we will actually see here 3 chairs, right? And those are the 2 subjects. You can pick up any subject that you want at any moment. And if you want to come and sit here, that's fine. And the moment somebody comes in, somebody from us will leave and the conversation continues. So that's how we'll do it, right? Yeah, are the rules clear for everybody?
So how do you switch to make it not crazy?
Well, you come and you say you want to say something, then somebody from us will leave. And then if somebody else will say, you will come and somebody else will leave. So, but we discussed 2 points. We need QAs and we don't.
Okay, let's start and then figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
What do you mean with or without QA?
Well, that's what's...
Let's find out.
Let's find out. So, Peter, thank you for coming. It's a real pleasure having you here. And when we were preparing this discussion with you, we came across a very interesting thing. You triggered me. I said, you're going to talk about something about as a product owner and you said, well, it's a toxic storm. Why is it toxic?
So, I work as a product manager. And in product management,
it's people, right?
So product owners is something else.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here's the thing. Product owner is a term invented by Scrum. But at the time, product management already existed. They needed to call it something else. Product management is maybe broader than product owner is specifically a Scrum role. Scrum is a project management framework for managing projects. Not necessarily about products, and product management is just much broader than that. So product owners are only involved in delivery. Their job starts with a feature or a list of features, like this backlog. And this list of features somehow comes out of, it's magic, it just comes out of thin air. Product management includes how you get there. Like, why should we build this feature? Why should we not build the other feature? What other options do we consider? What is even the problem we're trying to solve? So product managers are all about a problem. Like, if you want to boil down product management to one thing, it's obsessing about the problem. The solution is somebody else's focus, designers, developers, etc., delivery. Product owners in Scrums, that's only about delivery. It's a delivery framework, it's a project management framework.
Yeah, but then for the developer, right? So it also says simple tickets. So what's the difference? I want to see bugs in the features, yeah? Yeah,
so from a developer mindset, and I've been there for, let's say, 20 years it was, there's this idea that there are requirements. Like, we talk about you've got to define the requirement and we build that. But requirement is really the wrong word. Like, that suggests that it's absolutely, required. But most of the time, somebody is just making that shit up. Somebody has said, you know what? We should have a PDF export. It's not a requirement. Just somebody thought it'd be a good idea. Why? Who knows? Hopefully they talk to some customers. Hopefully they've got some idea about what problem it solves. But sometimes as a developer you see these feature ideas, and I think you should be asking, really? Why? That's what product management is for.
Yeah, okay. But then you know how it looks in the field, and Alex, please tell your experience. You ask why, you get a slap. Is this your experience, Alex?
Yeah, sometimes it is like that. You get a requirement in the game. Let's see how can I do it. How should I do it? It's not ideal way, of course. As a developer, no matter we talk about developer QA, like anyone in the team they should be like have critical mindset and asking like, okay, is it really needed? Why it's needed? But most of the times, decision is already taken, and you don't, as a developer, you don't really have this communication direct with the client, and you're like, okay, if PDF is needed, probably someone is asked for it. Let's see how we do it.
Yeah, so I guess there are two reasons why you might get a slap, or you might be told to just stop asking difficult questions. So one answer is that somebody's made the decision and they don't want to spend more time on it, and they think you should just do what you're told, which is not the worst scenario. The other, I mean, that's just a kind of a lack of trust or something, or just not being very polite. Like, let's at least have a conversation about what we're doing. That would be nice. But the other reason is that the person who came up with this PDF or export idea has no clue. They don't know why. So of course they're going to say stop asking difficult questions because they don't know the answer. They just made it up because the competitor has the feature and they thought we should maybe do that too. That's not a particularly good reason. I mean, they're not necessarily wrong, but how would they know?
Peter, you triggered me on something. And actually, I will kind of tell a story because I was working at a huge UK bank and they would give me insanely random bugs. And they asked me to put architectural insight on it and then ask me to prioritize it. So how can I prioritize bugs on the features that they ship to the customers?
Well, you should probably fix them.
Okay.
Right, and then, I mean, this is the QA angle of this feature, right? So, say you've built this PDF export feature. You've released it. Nobody uses it. What does that mean?
You have bugs in it?
Yeah, that would be a pretty. That's like the most likely explanation. If it doesn't work, nobody's using it. Another reason would be more important from a product management point of view. Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
How do you tell the difference? You can't tell the difference if it's buggy, because nobody's kind of really had the opportunity to try it out yet. So that's the product management reason why buggy features just tend to tell you anything. If it were actually some kind of requirement, like it's a legal requirement to have PDF export, I'm just making that up because that doesn't really sound right, then I mean maybe you can get away with having buggy PDF export. But most of the things you build, most of the features are not that kind of requirement. Even in banking, there are some of those in banking. You know, do it the right way, you go to jail, compliance issues. But mostly somebody just thought we should have the PDF export. And if it's buggy, well, if you're not going to fix the bugs, then you wasted your time building it in the first place.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because, shockingly enough, I have seen banking application which couldn't show correct balance accounts to its customers in some conditions. And those bugs were deprioritized for 3 years. Is it something that a good product owner should be doing, in your opinion?
No.
Okay, but why do they keep doing it?
I don't know, what priorities. So it's kind of common to have this sort of big backlog of things you might build one day and bugs that you're going to fix later.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a lot of reflection to realise that's never going to happen. Or at the very least, look at how often did you fix all of that stuff or build all of those things. So you should either fix the bugs or just be a bit honest and delete the bug report.
Yeah. So, Alex, so next time when you get a bug, should you just not delete it right away because you know it's never gonna fix it?
What do you want to do?
Yeah, this is we come into this area of zero bug policy, so-called, right? When you either have bug or don't have bug. I think it heavily depends, of course, on priority and how you evaluate the cost of the bug, because you cannot treat all bugs the same. And there are bugs that cost way more. There are bugs then, PDF export which no one uses, and there is bug. So okay, let's speed their bug. It doesn't matter. Or there are bugs that affect business to some extent, but they don't have that high priority. There are more important feature, or they are not that crucial. It's just maybe not nice user experience, but or this is like it's gonna be migrated to another new feature will be released, so it's not make sense to fix it. So it heavily depends on what type of bugs we are talking about here.
They're using our services. We're getting the revenues. We don't have bugs. Even if we do, we don't. Is it? Do you recognize yourself in this statement?
Yeah, kinda. It's it is true. It is like that.
Okay, so then why do we need policy? Well, let's just ship some crap and let the customers tell us. If they can swallow it, then let's be okay. And if they don't, then maybe we need to worry.
Yeah,
If they
so-
am I up to something?
Well, I guess there's some context at this point I've got to add, which is I'm making some assumptions about why you're building software. Right?
Yeah.
So if you want stuff that's going to solve a problem for the customers and they're going to be happy about that,
Yeah.
then you kind of need to fix the bugs. But if you already got paid whether or not the software works, you're in this other business model.
Yeah.
Apparently, I don't know what you call it, consulting or something.
Yeah. Okay.
And if the economics are not sufficiently aligned with what
Yeah.
customer values,
Yeah.
then you might get these weird scenarios where things don't work, but you don't fix it.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily better for the software, the customers, that's just because your business model allows that. But I think that's a bug in the business model.
Okay, and that doesn't need to be fixed then.
Well, I mean, that's out of the scope of the discussion.
Oh yeah.
Out of scope. See what
Out of scope.
That's my argument.
Yeah, kind of, if there's a bug and we don't want to fix it, then we should probably document it quite well.
Yeah. Now I want to go back to what you just said about there are two kinds of bugs. I think there's the ones you fix because they matter. The rest, I think you should just, if you're not going to fix them, be honest about it and delete the bug report. There's no point having this third kind where we're not going to fix it, but we're going to put it on the backlog. That doesn't. Those two kinds, they're the same. You're not going to fix it either way. But one of them generates lots of meetings. So, I mean, if you like meetings, by all means have the backlog of bug reports.
Okay.
That's the only thing you get out of it, meetings.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, there is an issue, someone spotted, let's say developer, QA, client, and they say, hey, there is a bug, and you're like, okay, I have higher priorities, I'm not gonna fix it in upcoming 2 sprints, so you delete it, right? But in like 2 sprints, 3 sprints, you have another bug, like, hey, there is an issue, it's still there, please solve it, and you again do documentation, do estimation of business impact. You see, okay, should I fix it or not? You again remove it. And this process repeats again and again and again. So at some point there should be realization that, okay, probably this is, it should not be deleted, but we should fix it. Because apparently we could have miscalculated this business impact and it might cost a lot for us because more and more customers notice it. So my point is, so a clean backlog is okay, it's great, everyone likes to see clean backlog. But isn't it better to have something on your backlog and come back to that if it's reoccurring and you have already work done, it's documented, it's evaluated, you can just like put a bit higher and really actually work on that.
So this sounds kind of good, but I feel like in practice this works out slightly differently. This happens sometimes, but not very often. When that does happen, you recognize it. So the first time you delete the bug report is because you guessed this isn't going to affect anybody else. The third time, hopefully you're being honest with yourself. It's like, okay, it's the third time now. Maybe I need to reconsider whether we should fix this. And you don't need to have written it down. You'll recognise it's come back.
Yeah.
You recognise the same thing. The thing is, in this trade-off, 95% of bugs are the other kind where it doesn't come back. And so that backlog creates this huge mess of work, and you can't find these things.
Yeah, quite interesting. This, but then come back to the question. Yeah? so far we have been talking about how to efficiently delete the bug reports and pretend that we see them for the first time. I totally see them manually. Yeah, so most people will do it. And let's assume that for mysterious reasons we have honest developers in the team. Then whose job it would be to actually say, hey, this is the bug that needs to be fixed now?
In the software I've worked on in the recent years, that's something a product manager would do, make those prioritization decisions. And it would need to be, at the very least, it needs to be somebody who understands the impact on the customer. To understand the impact on the customer, you need to talk to them, you need to talk to customer support, to go and ask them, how often have you seen this, that kind of thing. Now, that could be anybody on the team, but the people who write code tend to like writing code as much of the time as possible. So
Yeah.
they're probably not the people who are going to go and have
Yeah.
all these meetings with customers and customer support and such. So that's one of the things that you might specialize in the product manager.
Peter, you triggered me on something. You have been doing agile projects recently?
No,
No. Okay. Like
not projects. I'm not saying they're not agile. Agile way of working, sure, but not projects.
Oh, okay. All right. The one thing which baffled me all the time is that there is a fairly recurrent practice of doing refinements. And what does it mean in practice? Teams which never talks to customers.
So I already feel sick, but keep going.
Okay. Okay, I'll leave it at this moment. So a team of developers
Yeah.
who never talks to customers gather together and they start decide, okay, we have a ticket which we don't understand. What will we make out of it without talking to the person who has written it? And this seems to be like a norm. Now,
This is just toxic misapplication of Scrum. I think in most cases.
well, probably, you and myself, we are minority, kind of.
Okay, so I have a question for the audience. I mean, we'll take Scrum as an example because it's sufficiently popular that it covers a lot. Scrum talks about two kinds of backlogs. There's a sprint backlog.
Yeah.
The other one is called the product backlog. Now, a sprint backlog is what you're going to do in a particular sprint. The product backlog, how much is in that?
According to the book or according to
Okay, how much does Scrum say is in the product backlog?
you need to have 2 months, like highly refined, and then a bit more on epics and high level or something? 6 months?
You go for 6 months. Anybody have a different?
I don't think it has anything. It doesn't say anything how much upfront should be defined. Maybe 1 sprint upfront.
Okay, so Milan makes a point because the Scrum guide doesn't say. As far as the Scrum guide is concerned, it could be empty until the day before the next sprint. The only thing that would be bad if you don't have enough to put in the sprint backlog for the next sprint. So your deadline to have, let's say you do 10 things a sprint, it can be empty, and your deadline to have 10 things in it is the next time you do your sprint plan. There's no reason for it to have lots of stuff in.
That's pretty management.
And it's maybe, bad things happen if you have lots of stuff in there because people start having these refinement sessions that take hours and nobody likes them. And they only deliver value if you still remember what you talked about when it comes down to actually building that stuff, which is unlikely because that refinement session was probably weeks ago.
No, if not months, remember years.
So what if that backlog didn't exist and when it's time to make one for the sprint, then you talk about these issues for the first time?
But it will take forever.
But which issues? You should take them from somewhere. So they either reside on backlog,
So you could run them just in time.
then
So-
you tight on schedule. So there should be something prepared.
Okay, so the week before.
Yeah.
The week before, you could say, oh look, backlog's empty. We're probably going to need 10 by next week.
Yeah.
Let's think of 10 things we could do.
But then the idea of the backlog is to kind of have also in early stages to have a kind of box of ideas somehow and refine them through time.
Validate them.
Yeah, refine them, make them.
So I think you should not do that because these ideas are usually features.
Yeah, ideas
And-
that become features as much as we refine them and we make.
So there's this other world where instead of having this backlog of ideas, you have this backlog of problems to solve. And you pick one of those at a time to work on. And when you say, right, next sprint's going to be about this problem, now is the time to work out how we might solve that problem and come up with some feature ideas. Let's say max 2 weeks in advance. Empty backlog. If anything, you've got a backlog of problems, but that's maybe 10, keep you going for a year.
And this is applicable for what type of organization?
Okay, that's the right question. So, some but not all of them. So, to get away with this, one, you need a lot of trust from your management team. And you need a management team who will trust you enough to not tell you what features to build. So I've already ruled out a lot of corporate IT.
What about the complexity of the project you're working on? Because that's beautiful if you own everything you need to build, but when you depend on other things, that's not feasible at all.
So there are reasons indeed why that time window might get longer. If you have like team dependencies, that really messes you up because you can end up needing to plan things a few months. Yeah, you need a concept.
Come on.
I'm just trying to figure out what the conversation is about.
Yeah, so you may end up with a longer backlog because you can't avoid a longer backlog because you need to coordinate with other teams. Now, how far ahead do you coordinate with other teams? I mean, just minimize that as much as you can. Also, maybe you've got a complex user interface and the designers need, a few minutes to kind of go through feature options. So sometimes you need to say to the designer, 3 months from now we might be working on this problem, that one or that one, so you should have a little think about what we might do there. This can push things ahead. The crucial trick in both of these cases is to resist writing down features for as long as possible. There's the discussion that's happening earlier, but not the actual design of the feature.
How deep can you actually go into a feature if you only think about it 2 weeks in advance? Like, how do you validate the idea? Because usually in an ideal world you have a project that has proper standards, that you have proper metrics, that you have analytics from the users, you actually analyze this, you understand what the user needs and not, and that requires time to actually go deep into that and make a decision, go with the designer team, do a design sprint or not.
Yeah, so say you have a big complex feature that's going to be months of work. That means that months ahead of coding, you're having this conversation. It doesn't mean that months ahead of coding, you've got 3 months worth of user stories written. That's the part that you can delay.
Yeah.
Everything that looks to a developer like a backlog item, you can delay until a couple of weeks before. And that delay gives you a lot of freedom. Like, there's lots of techniques for mapping out how a feature might spread out over a few months. You do things like user story mapping, where, particularly as a designer and a product person, you might think, well, we want to build this big feature, but what could we deliver every week to get there? That's sort of spreading things out. This is the epic story. So you may be having a conversation about what the epics might look like, but it's on a whiteboard somewhere, virtual or real. What it isn't is a load of Jira issues that are user stories. Those you don't need until much later, once you say, right, what's the next slice of this feature? What are we going to do for the next couple of weeks?
How do you deal then with the priority changes?
So priority changes are sort of, do you mean changing your mind halfway through?
So
What kind of priority?
this is the reality in life, right? You're working in a big organization, you have a lot of dependencies, you have a lot of pressure from different situations in the market. Could be whatever.
Yeah.
So you're working this way, you start having ideas, so you start splitting up the epic or the feature in small chunks that you start refining just before you start working the sprint, which is perfectly fine, and then everybody knows what's going on, but there's only something happens, and then you start working on something else, and then you have this kind of like half guilt in the process, and then you need to leave it there, and then you need to focus on something else, but then this happens several times.
Okay, if this keeps happening, then something is broken. Now, one of the things that could be broken is you don't have a consistent strategy. As a product team, product strategy, or as a company, you keep changing your mind. Strategy should be a bit consistent to be a good strategy. Another possibility is that it's really external reasons for the change, like something happened externally in the market. Happens once, fine, but if it keeps happening, then I guess you're not being agile enough if you're not ready for that. So agility is all about these changes of priority. So if you plan 3-month features, but you're in this environment where you get these kind of rapid changes, then you've got the wrong level of agility for the situation you're in. So you need to change your planning process to a much shorter timescale so you can be more agile. There's a tension, like you can't always have both. It gets easier for designers and for marketing if you plan months ahead, but that makes you less agile. So you have to kind of choose, and that's a strategy question. How agile do we plan to be? How quickly do we expect to change our direction if new information emerges?
Sorry, I'm not sure if you want to chip in, but because I'm really interested in this because I see it every day in my at least my current project, and I've seen it in every project I've been part of. So we were talking before, like you have this product owner role that was basically created by Scrum, and then basically tries to give all this autonomous feeling to the team so they can do and adapt to whatever it is that they need to do. But in reality, you're still part of a big organization that have bigger plans, and then you need to fit into these. Yeah. But then they remove this project manager type figure that maybe you had in other frameworks to give you this product owner so you feel like you're independent, but then nobody's organizing the whole orchestra.
So it depends what the product owner's day job is. So a bit of an anti-pattern is that the product owner, that's actually their job title, and that's all they do. You know, a job title that just says product owner and you write user stories of Scrum team, that's not great. Because that person probably doesn't have the big picture, but also the position in the organisation to really make business decisions. If your product owner is actually a department head or business leader, then they're more likely to be able to answer that question for you because they have this broader responsibility. And at the very least, one of the things that your product person needs to be able to do is have conversations with everyone in the organisation, essentially including the CEO, so that they do know this. So a product owner who can't answer business questions is not in a good place. It's tragically common for Scrum product owners to be kind of separated from this, and they're just taking orders for what features to build from sort of somebody outside. That separation is not good.
Yeah, I love that saying. Yeah, I remember this Scrum course one time, and then they had this trainer saying like you have two, well there were three, I don't remember what was the middle one, but two or three different type of product owners. You have the proxy ones, which is basically just getting a decision from someone, then guys, we need to build this right away because we got a request, and then drop whatever you're doing, all hands on deck, and just build this up. Or the ones that actually fight the business and try to align with other departments and say, okay, we need to build this, how are we going to actually build it, and what actually do we need to do? Most of the times I see the proxy type of manager or product owner rather than actually having someone that thinks and actually protects the product and decides how to actually build it.
Yeah, what is the point then in this position of proxy product owner? Because it's just passing orders by, right?
Yeah.
It's really. Yeah.
It serves a purpose. It allows management to not really be well organised about how they run their organisation. It allows the person who has the responsibility to not get involved in this ugly, unpleasant work of software development. I don't think that's such a good plan.
Yeah, and then we're coming back to the question. Okay, so developer in the end, because this proxy passes on tickets. It goes, let's assume, to the architect. From an architect, it gets to QA, and then it goes to the developer. And then the developer is the last barrier between nonsense and the keyboard. What should he then do in this situation?
That's not, I would say, a developer's role to fight it back. Of course, you can ask questions, you can doubt decisions, but you don't have the whole picture as a developer. If you do not like this whole picture, what's on the market, what's needed, what are the requirements, is it nonsense or not? Probably this is you're doing not your work already, and something is wrong in your organization. Probably people above you, they don't do your job right.
That's a brilliant point. And then if we come back to the definition of the quality then, so if we have this nonsense coming in, and we don't know what we're doing in the first place, then why bother doing actually, as you said, let's stop pretending, right? Why do we pretend that we can do assurance of the quality? Because we don't know what the quality is. So we don't need a QA, right? So instead of hiring QA, we can hire more developers and just get the problem a bit bigger and have a bit more hands producing a little bit more code and maybe doing more other automations. So what's your take on it? So do we need a QA? If we don't know what we do, yes.
In practice, yeah. I mean, I liked what you said about as a developer you can ask questions because that can really help. Especially when you can ask a question, why are we doing this? Who's it for? That kind of stuff that you're not being told. If you're told it doesn't matter, maybe as a developer you end up saying, well, it affects my design choices, my technical design choices. A lot of development is, well, do we need Kubernetes or are we going to write shell scripts? That might have a big implication for how long it's going to take to do it. The questions might matter. Why do we need QA? So QA can maybe help in asking questions on behalf of the developers. And then, more generally working with the products. We talk about a product trio, like sort of tech lead, a QA, and a product manager can often together address these kinds of questions more effectively for the developers, for example.
Yeah, so why would then a good developer want to pair with a good QA?
There are multiple reasons. I
Oh,
would say,
okay.
Because, yeah, first and foremost, as Milan said in previous his speech,
Yeah.
QA engineer has better expertise, better knowledge. Maybe it's more narrow than developer's knowledge, but it's way deeper. And having QA person, you can have better quality assurance procedures. Yeah, it also QA. This is a person who likes work with quality assurance, who likes writing tests, and making sure that the proper strategy is in place. Keep an eye on monitoring and sticking to all those procedures that was defined by test plans. Developer, on the other hand, they more focused on delivering features, and this is where, yeah, you make people happier by splitting those responsibilities. I'm not saying it completely separate, and developers don't care about quality, but when it comes to writing tests and doing monitoring, maybe there are better specialists, better roles for that.
Excellent. That's something. Sorry, you want?
I was going to disagree a little bit, but I mean, yes to all of those things, but I think there's more to it than that. Developers have this special weakness when it comes to testing, is only seeing code as the solution. So, developers and automated tests, that's great, but there's so much important stuff that you can't automate when it comes to testing. And QA often ends up being the person who can think more broadly than tests that are automated.
Yeah, indeed. I will come back to this because I have a trigger comment on this. Alexei, in your opinion, what we see from our customers is proliferation of setups where they call everybody engineer. Just engineer, that's it. Even in my current project, I'm infrastructure engineering level 3. Kind of, whatever that means, right? Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, after 25 years of experience, yes. So, and I was kind of thinking in preparation of this debate, well, I can't assume that all the companies are that stupid, that they just kind of get rid of QA because it is useless. And there must be a reason for it. And then I would just say, if we separate the roles in such a way that it makes sense, we can make actually people happier. So why don't companies do exactly opposite? By putting people into this one uniform roles and, well, you're just bloody engineer, so you bloody do everything. What do you say?
Indeed, I also I think I feel this trend that you have in the team people like 5, 6 devs who do everything. Do quality assurance, do delivering features, do DevOps stuff, do release, and so it's like having jack of all trades. But it at first glance may give you a feeling that you're saving cost because you don't need to hire a separate person for that. And this is also another reason for that is the so-called shift left, right? To make quality assurance be set up at the very beginning of delivering feature of creating project. But I don't think this is the right approach. And usually what I see, it doesn't really work well against companies which have dedicated QA or QA team. It doesn't matter. Because again, as I said, it's and what Peter said that developers more in mindset. Okay, I deliver this feature. Okay, in my head there is like 50 lines of code. I need to cover 49. It will be 99%. So I'm good with my QA quality assurance. But QA and quality assurance is way more than that. It's more not just having tests in place. It's thinking about strategy, how it should be tested, different kinds of tests, different tooling, and by putting this everything on developers' shoulders, it's like you need to know a lot of stuff, and most likely you will not be interested to go deeper in understanding what you should do to have this quality assurance.
Actually, no, I very agree with you in a sense that shift left, in my opinion, was invented by, let's say, very experienced people for very experienced people. And it kind of, it doesn't fit very well with inexperienced teams. And in fact, if you take a look at figures that Jet Sutherland has posted recently, it said 68% of all Jet team fails and 88% of them are Scrum. And from the field, there is a strong correlation with experience of people having. Somebody wants to join? You have to come. You have to come and see it. Come on. Harish, come on.
Do it, man.
Yeah, do it, man. Yeah.
I can make it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Harish, yeah. Take a seat. Yeah.
I am in support of the opinion that we should have a QA.
Yeah.
Where my thought comes from is because earlier we used to think about testing pyramid where there are more unit tests and then followed by integration and end-to-end being very less. But now, being the era of integration where we have more and more integration, the microservices we started integrating with more softwares, more tools, cloud, whatever. The integration has become so much, the components are becoming smaller, but the integration is becoming more and more. Though we can do integration testing with the test packages and whatever, but still having a QA, because we have a lot of integration, I think chances for failures are more compared to earlier. So I think if there is a dedicated QA, we can spend time on testing the whole functionality can be different. This is my opinion.
Peter, as a product manager, another developer, what would you pick between a good developer and a good QA? A good QA over a good developer, or a good developer over a good QA?
I mean, I think it's a fake question because you can't get software built with a single discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, if your question was a team that only contains good developers or have a QA,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that goes back to the experience thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna have, if your plan is just we're gonna have 5 developers with a QA,
Yeah.
then you roll in the dice that one of those 5 developers is interested in QA as a topic and is going to be good at it.
Mm.
Not always going to be true, and so dedicated QA is reducing the risk that none of the others care.
They're very interesting.
So.
Yeah.
Well, to put it another way, if you don't have QA and you only have the developers, like say the development team is one person,
Yeah.
maybe that's when your question makes a bit more sense.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing that's not optional is writing code
Mm.
on a software project. Like,
Yeah.
you might get lucky and it works and it's the right feature. Whereas if you've only got QA, then you've got some nice test cases, but there's no actual software. So that's obviously strictly worse.
Yeah.
What could potentially go wrong? Well, you're just going to have to iterate a lot more times until you find out how to actually make something that you can test and find out that it works.
Mm.
I mean, you know, as a product person, I could do the testing.
Mm.
Maybe it's not the best use of my time, because I might be really bad at it and really slow and it's going to take a really long time. But
Yeah.
maybe that's better than not doing, maybe that's better than the customer doing it.
Mm.
I mean, but again, it depends on your business model. Like in some business models, you totally want your customer to do all the testing because you're not paying them.
Oh yeah, I've seen it many times.
But again, if that's the case, then that's a business model bug rather than, you know, let's build good software in a good way.
Call it beta. That's what they do.
I have a question. So, yeah. So I mean, I want to hear your opinion, but now I'm in the chair. Like, so it was mentioned here, shifting left. But how would you, as a product owner,
Product manager.
justify the additional person would probably slow things down in comparison to not having that person and writing automate tests as much as possible, shift anything left. Imagine we also have like sprints, we are deploying every second day, but then we have a manual person who is, oh guys, we need to check this, we only can release after I am finished with everything, and so on and so on.
Okay, so there are things we want that are good but not enough by themselves. So one of them, the things we want is agility, and we can change direction when we need to. Definitely important. Another is we want to be faster. so we can get where we're going quickly. But you need to know which way to go. It's no good to be able to quickly change direction and run quickly if you don't know which is the correct direction. So one of the reasons to slow down is to do some necessary work, such as figure out what people actually need, product management work. And another is there's some kinds of testing that is going to be slower. Like, is this completely unusable? That you might not find with the automated tests. So, you know, the simplest example is it might matter in your market that your software is not ugly. We can't yet write an automated test for is it ugly? And more generally, is the usability good? Is it a good positive user experience?
Yeah. Basically, you trigger me. I have even a stronger version of it. That Milan will answer your question why Alex will prefer a good QA over a good developer if I have to make a compromise. It's applicable to the context where you have to deliver services. You know why?
Okay.
There is one thing which is called salary that you pay. You know where it's paid from. It's paid from the money we take from a customer. You know what needs to happen for us to get money from a customer?
It needs to work though.
No, it
Well,
doesn't.
do you have acceptance and sign off and stuff?
Oh, that's
Wow.
right. Right. The customer needs to sign acceptance. So in fact, speaking also from the service delivery perspective, well, this is true. You get paid only when customer signs acceptance, and QA, and QA are the three important people to get it right. Developers wouldn't cut it, and very frequently they don't. So that's kind of a piece of your very brilliant comment that I observe in practice. If you have a formal acceptance, then we find QAs in these teams, and if there is no acceptance, there are no QA.
I mean, to be fair, in a product company, you have an even worse kind of acceptance, which is that customers don't not sign acceptance; they simply cancel their subscription.
Oh, okay. I guess that's also very strong kind of.
Which is even easier for them to do than it is to refuse to. You know, because if your customer refuses to sign your acceptance sign-off, they end up in meetings which are not really pleasant.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So, and if we can to try to kind of summarize this very interesting discussion. A question from the field. I have a very lovely department lady. She came to me and said, "Alex, you are obviously very smart. We have a team which is asking to hire a dedicated QA for it, right?" And she asked my help. Well, what shall I tell the team? And I said, "Okay, I need to think, right? So, what kind of answer should I give to her?"
So I'll give you the product management answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a consultant, when somebody asks you a question, you say it depends. As a product manager, when somebody asks you a question, you say, what problem are you trying to solve? Why does the team want a dedicated QA? What is the problem that they think they're going to solve with a dedicated QA?
I guess
they probably should have one, because we seem to be in agreement that having a dedicated QA is a good idea.
Yeah.
But if the reason that they want a dedicated QA is because the developers have got together and thought, you know what we hate? Testing. Let's just hire somebody to do all the testing. That's probably going to end badly. And maybe you should not give them a QA. You should give them some training.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it would also be a solution. Okay, let's have I just have a different opinion. Okay, maybe there's not a budget or something for a QA in a team, but would you accept, maybe you as a developer, would you accept the being advised by a QA? So I was talking about the person who is not a dedicated person for a team.
Yeah.
So let's say there's 5 teams and there is one QA person, and he will jump from time to time, spend few sprints here, few sprints there, kickstart a framework, but developers would be in charge of writing tests. So still the tests is in hands of developers, but there is that one person who can advise. So is that acceptable by a product manager, and is that acceptable by developers?
Well, I've got bad news, Oleksii.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
I think what's a really great idea is that QA person designs how testing works. Shouldn't be doing the testing. The developer should be doing the testing. Because a developer that doesn't do the testing themselves, that's like a chef in a restaurant who doesn't taste all the food. Now, when I was a teenager, I worked in a restaurant, and the first thing the chef said is, look, you taste everything before it goes to customers. Somebody has to taste everything. When this doesn't happen, well, the true story was, one of the things that is served to customers in a restaurant in England is custard. you know, that hot stuff you put on your cake
Yeah.
for dessert.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes when you're in a rush, in a high-stress situation like in a kitchen,
Yeah.
you put in the wrong ingredient that looks like the sugar but is in fact the salt. If you don't taste it before you taste the thing you made, then you're going to share something disgusting to the customer. That's the same as the developer. Like, if you get into the mindset you don't taste your own stuff, two things go wrong. One is you deliver stuff that's not tasty, or whatever is bad in some way. But secondly, even worse, far worse, you don't develop taste, a sense of taste. But maybe the number one thing to be a chef is you need to know what good is. And I think that's true for software as well. If you can't test it and figure out what is high quality, then how are you getting better at your craft? How are you being better software? So I'm sorry, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Well,
fantastic. Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, but how would you train that sense of taste, right? I mean, there has to be someone. But for example, if someone is really bad at tasting stuff, you know, sprint or the sprint and again, like, do you feel the need, maybe as a product manager, to say, hey guys, like, this is really bad stuff. You really need a person there, or would you maybe, I would say, work with that developer, like, to improving their skills, or would you say, okay, enough is enough, let's actually hire additional person to handle that?
I think if you've got a problem, not fixing it is like not fixing the bug in the software. You get a worse problem. So repetition, practice, and then feedback. The feedback has to come from somebody who can say, no, you know, this is not as good as that. And that's another thing a QA person can do, is to say, look, you know, this is the feature you have, and this is the difference between this feature you want to release and how it should be. This is the test that if this fails, to show the failing test. But there are many contexts in software where the first step is to create a failing test. And if a developer doesn't see that it's broken, providing the failing test is maybe the teaching moment.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, indeed. You know, I will jump right now to the Peter said. Say, yeah, of course, I agree with what you say. So QA is there to set the guidelines, the standards, and the hygiene factor. I would say how to follow it. Because if this doesn't happen, then what you get? You have lots of unit tests which try to exercise a few little bits and pieces. And when you look at the product and you run the coverage looks fantastic. It's like 95%, 75% conditional coverage. Until you get a call from a customer saying that, well, you know, when I have transaction with these and these attributes, it doesn't work. And then you look at the unit test and say, okay, well, what are you talking about? And I've been in this situation before when I had to do this archaeological dig to actually understand, well, who was wrong. It turns out that both sides were wrong. So the guy who was saying it didn't know what he was asking, and the developer has implemented something. It was partial implementation based on partial specification with partially correct cases, etc. It was all down to this hygiene factor, the quality. It didn't exist. And that's what the quality assurance really can bring to the table. And this is what brings the very difference between whether the customer will sign the acceptance or not.
Yeah. I mean, I have so much things to say about the topic.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, I think it's just a tip of the iceberg. Like, coverage unit test. It's like not nearly enough the metric, in my opinion, and especially not only thing that matters. Like, there is just nowadays such a, let's say, different levels of testing all around, and even what you said that the coverage is like a big number. It doesn't really mean anything because I don't know. I mean, maybe code can behave properly, but the feature is not delivering. I mean, that's, I think, the most problematic part. If we are focused only on code and how code is behaving, and not actually seeing if the customer is getting the value, I mean, then there is like
So this is more like
Get back in there.
So what I wanted to say. So now we're talking about what kind of tests you should have, unit tests versus end-to-end tests, right? To see the whole feature how it works. And this is what I wanted to mention. regarding have QA, not have QA, this is another area where QA actually shines, because defining this strategy, like you have this lots of unit tests and no end-to-end tests, or vice versa, like you have a bunch of end-to-end tests which run like 2 days and you have results only afterwards. It's also something that you need to have expertise to know how to approach it, how to do it right. You can have this test by minute, with when everything works fine and you have quick feedback and you have low cost on running those tests and you create them fast, versus this what's called ice cream cone, when you have like a bunch of end-to-end tests and it doesn't work for you anyway, because the environment flaky, or it takes time to write them, or it takes time to run this pipeline.
Yeah. But how do you then, if you're not having a QA in your team, I'm curious, like how then do you decide how you're going to test the feature? So let's say you're developing something, you have to write the unit test to meet the coverage. Is there maybe integration test? By integration, I mean, is it maybe a situation for for something else? I mean, for performance thing as well, or any other way. So how do you decide what you're going to test if you don't have like some test strategy and some end goals in that sense?
Yeah, so from my experience, it's like heavily depends on team. If you have a person who like, okay, our test sucks, let's think about this, bring up those topics, like if we don't have performance tests, or our performance tests like failing, or they use inaccurate data which doesn't correspond to reality, yeah, then it works. But if in most cases developers like, again, like you mentioned, it's about mindset. Developer wants to develop features, and once he develops, okay, it works. I know it works, and that's enough for me. I'm not sure if it will work in like a couple months or a couple years, but now it works, so I'm done. Let's take next piece of work. So again, this is where indeed QA role is needed, because this is the person who cares about that and invests time about that. Even if you have a developer who is enthusiastic about tests and he wants to have this quality in place, he needs to have this expertise. He needs to learn, which test to write. He needs to set up API testing, performance testing. Do we need contract-based testing? And think about all those things. And the developer's time is most of the time is more costly than QA's time. From a manager perspective, to me, it makes sense to have dedicated person for that, rather than your senior developer who like really good at something. He's like, okay, now I need to learn hierarchy, and let's put aside my features that only I can do, and I do testing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. So I think definitely the QA is the right person there. But I'm just curious to know how are you then approaching what do you choose to test. But maybe questions too. So what he said, are you then happy? For example, we are your team, and would you be happy as a product manager to say like, hey, yeah, this is good enough? Like they tested it in the way he explained it. Would you say, yeah, I'm satisfied with this, let's go? Or would you say?
But the conversation I'd have with the QA and the developer is, what are the acceptance criteria for this bit of work? Do we all agree that this is the right acceptance criteria? Like, is that the right amount of scope? Can we reduce that? Can we do less and still find out what I want to find out? Such as, does this feature solve the customer's problem? And in QA to say, well, that acceptance criteria is kind of just so badly written, you can't test that. And I want the developer to say, well, I can't do that. Or, sure, I can do that, but that's going to take a month longer. So that's the conversation I want to have to answer this. Then I'm happy.
Yeah. And if all the questions are answered, then we can move forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ideally, before starting to write the code, by the way.
Yeah, not less than 2 weeks after. Yeah.
Right. Gentlemen, anyway, it's been 1 hour of fantastic discussion. So, guys, let's give the round of applause to our... And before we close, a question. What ChatGPT will do for the role of QA? Milan, what's your opinion?
I think it will further the gap between the need for the QAs, because everything that we discussed and a lot of companies don't actually have the QA roles. I think if they didn't need it until now, I think ChatGPT will just help them realize, hey, if our developer can just spend a few hours with the help of AI tool, I think it can like even further the, how to say, I don't know the word in English, but the further the gap where the company will say, hey, we need the QAs, because semi-QA job could be done with the ChatGPT. So I don't think it's great, but I use it anyhow.
I have this different perspective on this regard, because indeed, like AI technologies, this is future of every field, right? And QA is not exception in this, but again, we're talking about this expertise again and again. Like a lot of tools arising. It's not only ChatGPT, like special tools for testing emerging like every day, and you have more and more. And this is a raw area. You cannot just take ChatGPT and hey, ChatGPT, do me a favor, write all tests for me. No, it doesn't work like that. You still need to define this strategy. You still need to understand how to train this model. So that probably QA. Again, you don't ask this to do senior developer or middle developer, junior developer. You don't want him to spend time on that, because he needs to learn testing and he needs to learn how to communicate and interact with all those AI tools. But if you already have QA and he already does his work good, you can say, okay, you know what? Let's reduce our costs and speed up this quality assurance procedures and everything. Can you invest your time in that? And it's like a step further and not like starting from scratch.
Yeah, thanks.
I think I've got two answers to the question, because I mean, just thinking about ChatGPT, I haven't tried it, but what I would most wish to improve about tests is not that, this would be less effort done faster or something. But if I think about what I hate about test cases so often, is that the test data is rubbish, because it's so time consuming to come up with decent test data. Developers and testers often just don't bother, and so it's customer 1, customer 2, customer 3, and we don't notice that sometimes their names are quite long or whatever. So maybe we could just get decent, realistic test data for a change. I mean, that would have a big impact on the impact of the test. But I mean, more broadly about AI in general, so if we define AI as things computers can't do yet, which is maybe like the historical definition, then, I mean, earlier on I said that there are things, tests that you can't automate, like, is it usable, do customers care about this, can we, could better AI increase the proportion of things we need to test that you can actually automate as tests? And in particular, what would be really nice is that a lot of the kind of quality problems in software are really unoriginal. But the really tragic thing about being in the industry for longer is that you see sort of new developers just implementing the same bugs as the previous generation, right? Unoriginal bugs, it's like, oh yeah, here we go, it's another encoding issue, SQL injection problem. It's like, okay, every developer has to implement these 100 bugs once each. And it's kind of tiring, right? So, could we imagine AI being better at diagnosing why is our software buggy? Like, what is the question I'd want some help in answering is, what is this team collectively not doing? I don't need to pick on a particular developer. I just need to say, it's like, okay, the last 10 bug reports suggest that you need to go and read this book or go and think about this topic or whatever. Like, there are hard problems out. Internationalization is always harder than you expect it to be. And so if the AI is noticed, maybe an AI can notice that you get more internationalization bugs than you really should have. So maybe there's a skills gap there and you need to learn about that. For example. find out why the software is bugging.
Actually, this is one of the directions that this QA with AI collaboration goes, is test scoping. Like based on historical data, you can train your model and say, and it will tell you, okay, those tests make no sense. And those tests are, you have only few of them, but they spot the most bugs, so pay attention here. And this is, again, like, that's why you need a person who knows this, who understands this, can do this analysis, and talk to these models, because it's not like it will replace QA, it will assist him to do his job better. So, plenty of opportunities it provides. Again, you need a person who can leverage this.
Any closing comments from that?
Regarding this QA versus, it's necessary.
No,
Otherwise you talk that.
you have to come up. You have to come up.
It's
Yeah.
just,
It's a debate. You have to come up. Come on.
Then no ask questions.
Yeah.
no, it's not.
It's a secret.
Yeah, that's it for you. Yeah. Yeah, courage, come on. Yeah.
I agree with what it says here. It's just that a fool with a tool is still a fool. That's what I think about it. If there is a tool that can help, but if you don't know the right way to use it, or you cannot put the context for it, then it just gives the generic answers that come straight out of a book or something. Because the context is something that only a human who has a perspective about the project or the feature can provide there. Only then it can help, otherwise it's just a tool where a fool can.
Makes sense.
All right. So then, guys, one small round of applause. That was a fantastic discussion. Right. So